So you want to take clues on how they love you, and that's usually how they want to be loved. How can we fight fair? How can we fight in a way where we both leave the conversation feeling heard, feeling valued, feeling respected, feeling understood? A relationship is an opportunity to experience the world through a different perspective.
Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Relationships. Today, we're going to be talking about conflict. And now let's be real, conflict is inevitable, whether it's in your romantic relationships, your friendships, your family, or even at work. But the way you handle it can either bring you closer together or it can drive you guys apart. So in today's episode, we're going to be diving into how do we turn conflict into connection. We'll talk about how to fight fair. We're also going to look into the 4 biggest relationship killers. And we're going to explore the 6 intimacy tanks that keep relationships strong. Plus, we're going to explore how having the right support system and community around you can make all the difference in your relationships. So, whether you're in a relationship or you just want to build healthier connections, this episode is going to be packed with so many good insights, and you don't want to miss this one. So let's get to it. Welcome back to Let's Talk Relationships. Tannaz, I'm so excited to have you on today. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be on.
Yeah, so today we're going to be chatting about conflict. I feel like there are so many misconceptions when it comes to conflict. Many people think it's bad, people shouldn't have conflict, or when I meet my perfect person, I'm not going to have conflict, and I think there's so many misconceptions about it. And so we're really excited to dive into that today. But before we dive in, I would love to hear more about you, Tannaz. Thank you for coming on. And I would love to hear kind of your background, your story, how you got into counseling and coaching, what drove you to kind of get into it. And yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
Of course, I'd love to share. So my background actually is in conflict resolution law.
Love it.
And that's was conditioned to be a lawyer. And that's the path that I chose. That's the specialty that I chose. And I kind of went into family mediation. And shortly after, I realized, okay, I really don't understand why we're here. Why are we fighting over who gets a $10 plate?
Yeah.
Just the topics that just had a big question mark for me of how do we go from I love you so much till death do us part to this moment. And it didn't feel energetically aligned with me. And so after all those years of studying, I was like, I want to do something different, but I didn't know what. And at that time I was running a book club where we were reading self-help and spiritual books. And one of the girls at the book club told me, have you heard about coaching? At that point, this is 2017, I had no idea what she was referring to. Especially because the coaches that I had seen were either wellness coaches or business coaches. And so I got curious. I really have this big belief that the universe speaks to us through other people. And so I started to do the research and I was like, okay, this sounds really interesting. Let's start. I went into it and then I wanted to niche down on relationships. I really wanted to be on the proactive side. And I understood that the health of a relationship is based on 2 things. One is 50% is doing the inner work. So knowing yourself, understanding your attachment, understanding your childhood, understanding your belief system. And then the other 50% is relational skills that were not taught in school and for many of us were not modeled as children. So
Yeah.
communication skills, conflict resolution skills, intimacy skills, and pretty much everything else that helps us build and cultivate and maintain healthy relationships. So that's how I got into it around 8 years ago. And 3 years ago, I said, okay, I need more tools in my toolkit to help my clients. And I went back to school for my master's in counseling psychotherapy so that I could have more modalities, therapeutic modalities at my disposal to help clients do both the 50% of the inner work as well as the relational skills.
Wow, what an incredible background. That's awesome. I love to hear this. So I'm so curious, being that you were in conflict law and 8 years of practice, I'm sure you have seen it all. I'm sure you've seen the gamut of conflict resolution and what you're seeing kind of, break down relationships because people aren't really equipped, like you said. What do you feel like are the biggest misconceptions when it comes to conflict? and kind of from a broader perspective.
Yeah, well, you already touched on one, and it's this idea of um, the absence of conflict being a good sign. And when a couple especially comes to me and says, "Oh, we never fight," I always have this like alarm light go on because it usually means one or both parties are abandoning parts of themselves to maintain the peace. This relationship doesn't feel safe enough for me to be human. And so
Sure.
I'm wearing these different masks. And so that's the biggest misconception. The second one is if there is a rupture, and that means that relationship is doomed. And again and again, we're seeing that the quality of the repair can actually enhance the level of connection. So, if we know how to repair that rupture, we can actually come out of it feeling more connected than prior to that conflict taking place. So, it's really removing all these misconceptions around the fear of conflict, removing that fear and learning, okay, how can we fight fair? How can we fight in a way where we both leave the conversation feeling heard, feeling valued, feeling respected, feeling understood? And how can we use conflict as a medium for deeper connection?
Wow. And I'm sure you're familiar with the work of John Gottman and
Of
his
course.
wife. Incredible work. I mean, they really stand on that. They've said
Hmm.
that they're able to predict kind of the fate of someone's relationship really based on how they argue and how they resolve
Yeah.
conflict ultimately, maybe argue is the wrong word, but really how they resolve conflict. And I think so many people just miss that and don't fully understand that. So, what are some mistakes that people make when it comes to arguing with their partner? First of all, I love that you said that, often the lack of argument is someone abandoning themselves. And wow, I have never heard it put in that perspective. And it's so, so true. Because if you aren't able to show up fully as yourself or disagree with someone, because I can't imagine you're in a partnership with somebody and you agree with everything. Like
Mhm.
isn't that isn't real, you know.
Yeah.
And I've been in relationships where either I or my partner really just didn't bring anything up. Something would bother them. Maybe they felt like, a need wasn't being met or something in the relationship wasn't happening. Um, and that nothing was ever brought up. And if you don't bring anything up, nothing can get resolved. So what do you feel like, with your experience, like what are the biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to conflict?
Well, you touched on so many nuggets, golden nuggets, because one of them is your partner is not a mind reader. They cannot read your mind. They cannot know what you want and need and expect unless you voice that.
Mhm.
Because even siblings in the same family are different. And it's because, and I love Dr. Gabor Mate who talks about this, every child will experience a different parent
Yes.
because parents are also evolving and they're
Mhm.
growing. So their experience with their children is going to be different.
So
And
different.
so while it's the same environment, it's different versions of that parent. So
Yeah.
you end up being different. So let alone two people come from different families, maybe different values, different backgrounds, different religions, different cultures. So, what you expect and think, duh, it's normal, may not be in that household. So, one is stop expecting your partner to be a mind reader. Stop taking in this content on social media of he should just know or
Mm.
she should just know. Be communicative, be open, be direct. I feel so seen when you do this. Is this something that you can bring to the table for us? Versus, you don't do this, you don't care about me, you don't love me. So it's also the way we deliver our needs and we communicate about it. And so the Gottman Institute, Dr. John and Julie Gottman came up with this concept of the four horsemen. So it's four communication um, styles or and traits that we want to be conscious of. And before I share, I want to say almost everyone is engaged in one or more horsemen at some point in their
Mhm.
life. This isn't to shame anyone, to create judgment or blame, but when we know better, we can try and do better.
Mhm.
So, what are these four horsemen? The first one is criticism. So now the problem is not the problem becomes the character of the person.
Yeah.
The problem is not that the dishes aren't washed and it gives me anxiety coming home and seeing a messy kitchen.
Hmm.
The problem is now you are a dirty person, you are disorganized, you are selfish. So we're being critical towards that person's character.
Hmm.
What happens if I attack your character? Naturally, you're going to become defensive. So the second horseman is defensiveness. Instead of hearing you, understanding you, now I'm going to go into I'm messy. I'm not selfish. Have you seen yourself? So
Hmm.
either I'm going to criticize you back and this ping pong will continue, or I go into this martyrdom role, this very victim consciousness of, you don't understand how difficult it's been for me today. I have done X and Y and Z and no one understands me. Again, there's no resolution. The third one, and the third one is very, it's not very, but more present in men than women, and I'll explain why, is stonewalling. So, what is stonewalling? Stonewalling is when I'm experiencing physiological flooding within me.
Hmm.
I want to say something, but the words won't come out. And the heart rate goes up. We might start to sweat. Pupils might get dilated. It's very different than silent treatment. Silent treatment is actually a manipulative method
Mm.
of control. I'm going to punish you by being silent until you learn to be and do better.
Mm.
Physiological flooding is I want to say something, but I can't.
Yeah.
And the reason men tend to experience it more is because as women, most of us, when we are younger, we sit down, we talk about our emotions
Yeah.
with, our friends. Like, how did that feel? Men, on the other hand,
Yeah.
aren't given that opportunity to be in touch with their emotions, to talk about it. So suddenly there's this rush of emotions coming up. They can't process it. So there's like this disconnect between mind and body and the speed of information, the speed of emotions, and they shut down.
Yeah.
And lastly, contempt. And contempt, based on research, is if it's present, it's the highest indicator of, I believe, over 96% of, it's either 93 or 96, but
Mm.
of that relationship leading to separation and
Wow.
divorce. And contempt, yeah, it's huge.
Huge.
So huge. And contempt is, we're at this point of disrespect, of disgust, of holier than thou stance. I know better than you. And it comes in two formats. It's verbal and nonverbal. So verbal, again, is like the sarcasm, this belittling.
Mm.
Were you raised in a barn? What kind of family did you grow up with?
Yeah.
And nonverbal. So the smirking of like half the face. Mm,
Hmm.
that, and we see it in politicians a lot.
Hmm.
So
And body language and,
yes.
the energies we give out. Yeah.
Yeah. So these four, when they're present, can cause ruptures to the respect in the relationship and kind of really prevent us from fighting fair.
Yeah. No, that's so fascinating. And, to tie in kind of, attachment theory as well and just our overall needs, something I'm learning now is oftentimes conflict comes out of a need not being met. So, for example, the couple that, the wife is pissed off that the, laundry is not in the basket. And over time, she's like, you don't care about me. You don't love me. And we go to these extremes. And oftentimes, if we start to backtrack into the relationship, we find that, she actually feels really unseen. She actually doesn't feel loved in the way that she needs to feel loved, right? There might be some overall needs in the relationship that are not actually manifesting or not happening for her or for him. It could go both ways. And so you see something like, the laundry not being done or laundry being on the floor, and that becomes an explosive trigger. And then now you have conflict because ultimately, we are not communicating the things that we deeply need. And oftentimes we don't even know that we need them. So it's like we look back, it's like, how does conflict even start from the get-go? It's like so much of that is often the things that are not spoken about, the things that are not
Mm.
seen. And it's this underlying, problems that we see in a relationship that aren't being addressed. And oftentimes, sometimes people don't even know that, like,
Mhm.
oh man, I'm actually really mad about something else, but I'm taking it out on the dishes, you know?
Mhm.
And now I'm upset at you. Now I'm criticizing you, right? And, the receiving partner is like, well, now I'm overwhelmed. Now I'm stonewalling. Now I'm shutting down. Meanwhile, at the core of the problem, it's, it's it could be intimacy. It's we're not spending enough time together. It's, we've lost having fun in the relationship. It's we don't have an emotional connection anymore. It's there's always something deeper, I feel like, in conflict. And conflict is kind of, I feel like the surface of it and how it kind of manifests. There's always so much deeper. And it's so fascinating because I think you would relate to this, but it's like how many relationships could actually be salvaged and saved and, just reunited had there been, you know, more knowledge of how someone was feeling, right? Understanding the underlying things in all those. And it's
Mhm.
been so fascinating to learn about this and to get to dive deeper in needs because, something else I was just reading about too is kind of our subconscious and conscious mind. Oftentimes starting an argument and having conflict in a relationship is often our subconscious way of trying to meet a need. So if you don't feel connected to your partner anymore,
Mhm.
starting a conflict, right? Raising your voice, making some big deal out of something, will actually warrant a response from your partner, which oftentimes is
Mhm.
a weird form of backwards connection, right? So
Mhm.
we don't realize that what we're lacking is connection. And instead, our subconscious is like, I'm going to be pissed off about something bigger, And so it's so fascinating to see, what I think to me, I look at conflict and I'm like, conflict is more information.
Yes.
Why? I think if we take the time to really ask ourselves, like, why am I so mad about this? Why am I criticizing my partner about X, Y, and Z?
Bingo. Bingo. You touched on so many important topics. You're absolutely 100% right. Behind every conflict is an unmet need that we might be aware of and we might not be aware of. And most of the time, we're unaware of it because we haven't had the time to sit down and process the internal state.
Mhm.
And it's usually easier to blame a finger to someone else.
Absolutely.
But when we're pointing one finger to someone else, we're pointing three to ourselves. So it really is an invitation to go within. And I think it was a couple of days ago, I had a lot on my plate and I was just in front of the computer for many hours with clients and doing some doing some submissions. And my fiance was like, "Honey, I'm gonna go to the grocery to buy toothpaste." And I burst into tears. I was like, "You don't love me. You don't care about me." And he's been with me long enough to know that he got curious with it, and I think this is such an important element of curiosity. He came to me and he said, "What do you need right now? What is coming up for you?" And I said, "I've just been so in my computer that in that moment that when well, I cried first. He
Yeah.
hugged me and he didn't judge me. Okay, let's
Like I let you like like I let it all out, which can I point out that is so vital in a relationship is oftentimes our partners need to just let us have the moment. Don't
Yeah.
take it personal. Just be
Mhm.
with your partner in whatever the emotion is. It could be frustration. It could be like, you know what? I'm just angry right now. I just like need to be angry. I
Mhm.
let me have the emo or I just need to cry right now. Like let me just have and it's like be there with your partner, hold them, hold their hand, whatever they need. Let them just process that emotion. And I think we get scared like a lot of the times, like if we can't process our own emotions, I think oftentimes when someone else has a big emotion, we're like, oh, no, 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 you can't have that. That's no, please don't have. So I love that he was just there with you in that.
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't like this, to be fair. It wasn't like this at the beginning of the relationship,
Mhm.
but I think it's because usually it's a very common approach to want to fix. Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Oh,
like
100%.
let's fix this. Like, what can I do? Okay, what did I do wrong? But now it's he knows enough to bring that safe, grounded energy of
Mm.
presence And
Yeah.
then I cried it out and he's like, okay, like what do you need? What is the need? And I said, okay, I just maybe need to go out for a walk. And when you said you'll go alone to the supermarket and you didn't ask me to go with you, I felt so overlooked. And it really didn't have anything to do with him. It was just me being in front of a computer and I didn't have human connection
Mm-hmm.
outside of the computer, that I did feel overlooked, but it was an internal thing that I wasn't seeing myself because I was so into my own work. So really being curious,
Mm-hmm.
holding space for your partner. And when that partner has had time to process it, okay, what is something that's coming up for you? How can I support you? And that was co-regulation.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, and I want to stress this out, co-regulation is great when you regulate your nervous system with someone else, but sometimes the other person doesn't have the capacity for that.
Mm-hmm.
So we
Yeah.
really need to be trained in self-regulation as well. What can I do? What can I reach out for in my toolbox that will help me regulate and go back to the baseline?
Yeah. Oh, and that is so vital in a relationship because, like you said, sometimes our partners aren't capable in that moment, right? They may not have the
Mhm,
capacity. And it's so important for us to get curious about, wow, I'm really, maybe, I had a client recently that said, like, my partner just plays video games all day. And I'm just like, how can you not see that I want time together? And I said, one, well,
mhm,
obviously, you can't read your mind, and she said, in those moments, she's so agitated that she comes out and says like, "Well, you always play," and then this is when the criticism and all,
mhm,
that comes out. And we've really had to work on like getting her to get curious in those moments of like taking time, be like, okay, I'm really, really upset right now. What is it that I'm actually needing from my partner? And one, have I communicated it clearly? And not
mhm,
just I need emotional connection from you or I need more time together, but actually getting really specific because for some
mhm,
person, time together could mean we're sitting on the couch watching TV. People love that. For somebody else, time together is sitting down, having dinner, phones away, talking, eye to eye communication. That's
mhm,
their version of I want time together. And I think so
mhm,
often is we don't take the time to actually understand what is it that I really need and how can I accomplish it? How can I get that need met? If it is for time, can I offer up a suggestion? And I think it's like
mhm,
taking that time to kind of regulate, right? And that it's like getting curious, why am I feeling this way? What is it that I
mhm,
actually really need? How would I actually get this need met? If I asked my partner specifically, what would that look like, right? I think it's taking on that responsibility for ourselves, right? We can only show up to some degree, and then our partner shows up to that other degree. But it's like we have to
mhm,
be willing to meet them in the middle, right? We can't be way over here and then they're way over here. And you're, as it's like there's got to be like a medium there. And I think, like you said, so much of it is just taking that moment. And sometimes it's only like 5 minutes. It's
mhm,
not out. Some people need 30 minutes, but sometimes it's as easy as like, okay, why am I mad? What is it that I need? And how can this need be met? Is as
mhm,
simple as those three questions. And then you can come to your partner with, hey, this is something I'm realizing. I love our relationship and I love you, but this is something I'm realizing that I'm lacking or a need that I really need from us. And here's how I think we could accomplish this. And
mhm,
you invite them into that space. You invite them into that. You know,
mhm,
because your husband could have responded with, well, why are you so angry? Like, I'm just getting toothpaste. Why is this a big deal? Maybe you should go call your girlfriend and hang out with her if you need time. Like
mhm,
that could have gone a totally different way. But he also took the time to be like, okay, I'm not going to overreact to this. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to hold space for her emotions. And then I'm going to
mhm,
get curious to ask her what is actually going on for her. And what could have been a conflict is now reverted to creating intimacy and creating closeness,
yes.
you
So,
know?
so, so beautiful. You're absolutely right. I think it's so important for us to be honest with ourselves,
Mhm.
to know that we are our own biggest advocates in the
Yeah.
relationship, and we really need to honor our truth,
Mhm.
our inner child's desires, our needs. Having needs doesn't make you needy, it makes you human. Everyone has them. And it's, sometimes I'm actually teaching a course right now. And one of the things we covered last week, and when we were doing feminine and masculine energy and balancing the yin and the yang, was, some of us have been conditioned to think to like, oh, you're such an easy kid. When we've heard this growing up, we can start to turn it into a narrative that not having needs, not expressing needs makes us easy, and we want to be easy in life. So again, a lot of it goes back to our childhood. And this is why an integrative approach is always best. You want to look into the psychodynamic, the childhood dynamics, the attachment theory. Then you want to go into the cognitive. You want to look at the belief systems. You want to look at the way you're processing life, because we have 11 million bits per information coming at us at every
Yeah.
moment. We're only processing 40 to 50, and we're filtering that based on our belief system. So cognitive plays a role. Then we want to look into somatic, our nervous system, how our body has held on to big T and small t. And so it really is a multi-system approach to understanding yourself, what you really need as a non-negotiable, and kind of discerning that between what you've been told to need. Some of the needs that you have are actually socially conditioned, and they're not your needs. And that's why when they're met, they don't really do anything for you. And there's still that emptiness, that hollowness within you. So really being honest with yourself of this version of me, this unique, everyone is so unique in what they need in their relationship to feel seen, heard, and valued. So being really curious with self, and then learning the language to express that to your partner. You said it so well. Invitation. I'm inviting you to step up. I'm giving you, as the Gottman Institute calls it, love map. This is a blueprint to how I want to be loved.
Yeah.
We want to set our partners up for success.
Exactly.
So this is how I want to be loved. And your partner says, well, this is how I want to be loved. Great. Let me study it. Let me honor it. And let me not make that assumption that just because I asked you that question last week, your answer is going to be the same this week. We're constantly changing and evolving. And even if you're with someone for 30 years, that's not the same partner a year ago. But if we continuously show up with curiosity, tell me more about that. There's a very good deck. It's called We're Not Strangers Couples Edition.
Yes. Oh, that's great. It's even great for friendships. So great.
Yes. So good. So many questions that you wouldn't consider on a day-to-day basis. Ask your partner, bring it up at dinner, during breakfast, bring playfulness into it. It really makes the world of a difference.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And, like you said, bring playfulness, get curious. I don't know. I think we've grown up to have this conception about relationship that it doesn't really require much. It doesn't require work. And when we say work, this is the sort of stuff we talk about. It's how do I continue to pursue my partner? They're going to be different people in 10 years. They're going to be different people in 20 years. The person you married is not going to be the person that you married 30 years later. They're different. And we have to continue in relationship to get curious. We have to learn our partner continuously, right? We have to infuse fun and adventure and dynamics into the relationship. It doesn't just happen. You could have met your soulmate. They could be the most amazing person. This is your soulmate. This is everything you've ever wanted. And that will still require work. It will often require, I think at the core, when I think of what will it mostly require, is death to your ego. Because ultimately, you can't get curious about somebody else when you're so consumed with yourself in the moment. This person's crying, they're upset. Oh my gosh, it's all about me. They're so selfish. Da, 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 da. You start getting into like, how could they think this about me? Versus like killing that off a little bit and taking the time to really, really see the other person, And I often feel like ego is a big part of why people, can't de-escalate heated arguments, or because we're so stuck kind of in our own little silos,
100%. It's this my way or the highway.
Exactly.
It's me versus you. And part of fighting fair is realizing you're both on the same team.
Yes.
It's you and your partner versus the problem. how can we come together and figure out how to navigate this problem? How can multiple realities coexist?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take away the validity of your perspective if
Yeah.
another perspective exists next to it. And
Yeah.
also, we can validate someone's feelings without agreeing with it.
Yep.
Sometimes we think validation is agreeing. No, I can valid it's valid for you to feel that. I understand your feelings. That's all you need to do is just people want to feel that they're not crazy for feeling the way they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to say, I understand. I understand that you would feel this way. And it's like water on fire. It completely allows the person to now feel safe. Their guards come
Mm-hmm.
down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, help me understand you better. Can you help me um, understand why that felt that way for you, how you saw it? And I always say a relationship is an opportunity to experience the world through a different perspective. So it's
Yes.
you get to have two lived experiences, yours and someone else's. And if you can see that as a blessing instead of a burden, it's just a mindset shift of, ugh, why do I have to see it through another perspective? To, yay, I get to see it through another perspective. Makes the world of a difference.
Yeah. And even in that, I get to see it from a different perspective and I get to learn a different part of my partner, right? I get to see the inner world of my partner
Mm-hmm.
versus, versus it being like, oh, this is like such a chore. It's like, it's a blessing. It's something that you get, your partner's giving you a part of themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
An intimate internal part. And you know what? It doesn't have to make sense for you and you don't have to agree with it, right? Because your internal part's going to be different. But, I think it's a beautiful way to get to know a deeper part of your partner, that you can down the road use to better be there for them, to serve them better, and it's like when I think about relationship, like so much of it, like if you are not ready to serve your partner and to serve the other person, you're not ready for a relationship. I'm sorry, but if you're not ready to lay down your life and to lay down your ego for the other person, you are not ready for a relationship. What you want is companionship.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the hard truth. Like that is what is required to be in relationship, And I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but it's this notion that like I'm willing to be uncomfortable. I'm willing to lay down, you know, all my preferences and certain things that I'm like, okay, I'm willing to see the other person. I'm willing to take the armor down for this person. That to me is when you're ready to commit to this person long term, when you're ready to be in a committed relationship. I think that's what's required.
Yeah. I mean, you can either be right or you can be kind, and you get to choose what kind of experience of reality you want. Sometimes couples will come to sessions and they're lawyering up. They think it's a
Mm-hmm.
courtroom. But you said, do you remember that text you sent at
Yep.
4:59
They've got
p.m.?
like, they're like this.
Receipt. And I'm like, listen, pause. You're on the same team. You're not on opposite teams. So you can either be right or you can be kind. And just because you're kind doesn't mean, because sometimes people are like, people will take advantage of my kindness as weakness. And it's not, kindness doesn't mean be mute. Kindness means how can I express my internal world with respect, with grace,
Mhm.
with understanding that this person is human too. And giving your partner the benefit of the doubt. This is a big element that, again, research has shown that couples who are able to have healthy relationships tend to give their partner the benefit of the doubt. So
Mm-hmm.
when their
I've read
partner
that, yeah.
does something, instead of assuming the worst, they're thinking, okay, they might have had X on their mind. Let me get curious. Let me ask them. Let me not make assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
So again, like how you would treat a team member is really, really, really important. And also just, you know, when it comes to fighting right, we want to know what um what our limits are. So we know our own
Mm-hmm.
limits. We know when our heart rate is going up. So taking pauses when that happens.
Yep.
You don't need to fix everything overnight. It's okay to sleep angry. It's okay to cool down and wait until the next day when you're both feeling regulated.
Mhm.
So, usually, when dysregulation and emotional flooding happens, you need 20 minutes to regulate. Some people
Mhm.
can do it at a shorter period, but minimum, we want to kind of have the 20-minute number in our mind and pause. Sometimes I will pause. I'll be like, a topic is so triggering that it might take my partner and I days to get through it because I'll keep being like, time out. I'll
Mhm.
go for a walk, come back. No, I'm still not feeling it. Let's come back to it later. And sometimes my partner will call out a timeout. I'm noticing you're getting flustered. We need to take a timeout. Come back when we can have this conversation in a regulated
Mhm.
state. Now, when this first happens, when couples first introduce this, there might be a partner. So if I call timeout, my partner might have a hard time with that and say, no, 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 I want to fix this now. We need to fix
Mhm.
this now.
Yeah, which is
Two reasons.
common for
Go ahead.
anxious attachment. Just to bring in
Right.
that, it's a lot more common for anxious attachment. Those that get more flooded, it's usually the fearful avoidant or the avoidant, generally
Exactly.
speaking. Yeah.
Generally speaking, yes. And so for the anxious person, it might be happening for two reasons. One, we've taken pauses in the past and the person hasn't come back to do it.
Mhm.
So now that we're saying we're going to take a timeout, I don't trust the timeout.
Yeah.
And two, as an anxious, I might be taking that as you don't care about me and you're
Yeah.
abandoning me. And so it's so important when you're saying that timeout of, and your partner has an anxious attachment style, say, I love you so much, but I can't hear what you're really saying right now because I'm really flooded. Let's come back to this conversation in 20 minutes. And even if you're not ready in 20 minutes, come back in 20 minutes and say, hey, I know I said I'm coming back in 20 minutes, but I still am not ready.
Mhm.
Let's postpone it for lunch. So you got to be very vocal with your anxious partner. And sometimes people go like, oh my God, that's so much work. And I'm like, when we enter a relationship, we all bring baggage with us. And part of
Mhm.
being in that relationship is honoring our partner's baggage and having them honor ours.
Yeah.
So being mindful of each other's triggers and trying to be as accommodating as we can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And so much of this too, um, we can be practicing also in our friendships. I think oftentimes we think, oh, we can only practice this when we're in a relationship, but oftentimes conflict comes up in friendships. And that's where I see people really don't like, I'm not talking about close friendships. This is where people really don't want to open up. They really don't want to solve conflict. But I look at it as such a great opportunity to practice some of your skills. So when you do enter into a long-term relationship, you feel a little bit more equipped in that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
100%. It's the same dynamics. It's the same skill set,
yep.
maybe to varying degrees. But I'll share an example. A couple of months ago, a friend of mine was going through a hard time. And so she was sharing with me and she was asking me for my feedback, and I was giving her feedback. And then a day later, she sent me this long text of trying to justify her
Mm.
actions. And I never asked her any of that. But I realized, oh, maybe my feedback had triggered her. So I straight up told her, I said, like, my love, you asked for my advice. I gave the advice, but my advice seemed to trigger you. I want to support you however you want to be supported. Let me know how I can support you. And so that same skill set of being curious, tell me how you'd like to be supported. I don't want to make an assumption. And I want to be there for you how you want me to be there for you. So sometimes in relationships, what we'll do is we'll support people how we'd like to be supported. We will
Yes.
love people how we want to be loved. And we don't realize we need
Mhm.
to love people how they want to be loved. We want to support
Absolutely.
people how they want to be supported. So it's the same skills that we use in friendship and
Absolutely.
relationship.
And that again, that requires us to maybe do the asking sometimes,
Hmm.
right? Again, this goes back to assuming. You don't want to assume someone, you can support them in this, or that way. You want to ask them specifically. Get curious about that as well,
Hmm.
because and that does mean sometimes we can't just wait and assume someone's going to tell us.
100%. And
We
that
have to.
kind of brings it back to the topic of you were saying of like serving
Mhm.
the friendship or serving the relationship. I talked about this a while back and someone said, is that the same as submission? And I said, submission has sometimes a negative connotation to
Yeah.
it, but it also could be positive of I'm submitting myself to the relationship,
Mhm.
right? To the growth of the relationship. So, spiritually, Kabbalistically, there's this concept that my teachers taught me many years ago is when I wake up in the morning, I ask the universe, tell me how I can earn the light of this relationship. So, how I can show up and be the best for my partner, how I can dedicate the my energy, the energy that I have for the relationship, to ensuring that my partner feels seen, heard, valued, and understood,
Mhm.
and vice versa, my partner. It's a two-way reciprocal street. But it's the same in friendship too. How can I earn the light of that friendship? How can I put in the effort? Everything requires effort. And sometimes that effort is asking the questions. Sometimes it's uh, maybe acts of service, whatever it is, but we want to show up, we want to be intentional, and we don't want to take any friendship or relationship for granted. I think sometimes things die when we just assume that they just know we love them. I was watching this beautiful interview of Benny Blanco and Selena,
Oh,
and he's like,
I
I
just
tell her
watched it.
it's so good, right? So
Talk about
good.
emotional intelligence. Some people got very triggered by it. I mean, I'm having somebody on in a couple of weeks. We're going to actually dissect it and talk about it. But yes, talk about like just beautiful emotional awareness, emotional intelligence for somebody. And again, he such a great example, a beautiful example of being curious about your partner. He's so curious about her. What can I do to make her day better? What can I do to make things better for her? Not in a codependent, if she's not good, then I'm horrible. Not it's not a codependent thing. It was beautiful. Sorry, go ahead. I got really excited.
So,
Oh, what a
right.
good what a good one.
So good.
Oh.
Healthy masculine to a
Healthy.
whole,
Thank
yeah.
you. Oh, it was awesome. It was a thing
It
of
was
like
so
it
good.
was a beautiful example that we don't see unfortunately enough. I would love to know more about his background. Like how was he raised? Did he go to therapy for this
Mhm.
stuff? Where did this stuff come from? Like I want to know more about his background now.
100%. Because, like, he was saying that he will mention how much he loves her over and over and over again. And that's something actually I experienced in my relationship. My partner was extremely vocal with his emotions, and he was extremely, um, like, huggy. He loved to hug and he loved to kiss, and physical touch is not my love language. But I had to learn to speak to him in his love language and
Mhm.
to mirror back, because when I saw that he was being so vocal with his words, I realized, wow, words of affirmation are also so important to him. So you want to take clues on how they love you, and that's usually how they want to be loved.
Mhm.
If it's like at the beginning of the relationship and you don't want to have these conversations,
Yeah,
but
right away.
our partners leave clues for us.
Mhm.
And so we want to be attentive to it. We want to pick it up. We want to give it back to them and have this give and take relationship, this reciprocity. So, 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 so powerful. Again, we don't want to take our partners for granted. We don't want to just assume that because they were there yesterday, they're going to be there tomorrow. And that doesn't mean that it's not to trigger anyone's abandonment
Mhm.
wounds, but it's to say that everyone deserves to be in a relationship where they feel seen and
Mhm.
valued. Gratitude, so important, to express gratitude for the mundane things. It's accumulation of the
Yes.
small things that makes a relationship healthy. Likewise, it's accumulation of small continuous ruptures that are left not unrepaired, that lead to disconnection and breaking up.
Yeah, no, and that leads me into, the topic of intimacy in relationship. And this
Mhm.
doesn't mean sex. I'm talking about emotional intimacy, and which it could mean that, but like you said, it takes a lot of small ruptures to really end
Mhm.
a relationship. It doesn't end overnight, right? But it also takes a lot of little things to repair the relationship as well. It's a lot of
Mhm.
different things. So how does intimacy really play, because I like to think of them as like our cups being full. We have certain cups
Mhm.
in our intimacy. But how does that play a role in kind of this relationship dynamic?
Ooh, okay. So before I talk about intimacy, the Gottman Institute found that for every one negative rupture, for every one
Mm,
rupture, you need five positive
that's
repairs to create balance.
crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that that was the ratio.
They call it the magic ratio. It's 5 to 1. So you
Wow.
need to like be wary of why it's so important to be intentional with the
Yes.
positive. It's like imagine a piggy bank. Like there is a rupture, that's okay, but now I need to inject 5 positive interactions between me and my partner.
Wow. And
And so, yeah,
that is really fascinating because I often hear relationships like, friends of mine, marriages, they'll say like, man, we were doing so good for a while. And now it's like every little thing, there's an argument, every little, spark. And it's like, I think it's because we just forget that the positives have to be continuous. It's not like, oh, I was nice a couple times and I did a couple positive things and we're good for a while, you know?
yeah,
It's like because it's like a piggy bank, right? You keep taking out for the negative and it's like, but you're not filling in for the positive.
right,
And all
right.
those ruptures though that we have, like how we repair obviously adds to intimacy in the relationship. But I think when we're really depleted, right, in the relationship of connection, of intimacy, every little rupture is magnified, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we're looking at intimacy, actually, we're going to break it down into 6 different intimacy tanks.
Mhm.
Because usually when we think of intimacy, we either think physical, sexual, emotional, but
Mhm.
there's other tanks within us that
Yeah.
fulfill different needs for us. And this is why community is so
Yes.
important. Harvard did a 75-year study on over 700 people and showed that the biggest influencer of our health is not our genetics, our nutrition, or sleep,
Mhm.
but the quality of our relationships. So it really signifies the importance of having a safe community to be in and that human interaction. So we want to look at intimacy again through this lens of 6 tanks. And what are these 6 tanks? I'll break them down and then we'll talk about why it's important. The first one is sexual. So in monogamous relationships, you're going to have your partner filling that tank, and in non-monogamous, there might be more people. Physical is non-sexual touch. So it's holding hands, hugging, kissing on the cheek, um, cuddling. So you could have physical intimacy with your friends, with your siblings, with your
Mhm.
parents, with your coworkers. You might even have it like if you're volunteering, let's say, at a retirement home, you might have physical intimacy with the people there, like hugging them, holding their hands. So again, it's non-sexual touch. We have emotional intimacy. So emotional intimacy is people that you feel emotionally safe with to express your feelings, your thoughts without judgment, without fear, without
Mhm.
shame. So I feel safe to show up as my true self
Mhm.
without wearing a mask. Then we have intellectual intimacy, intimacy that intellectually we feel stimulated. So we can have conversations. It might be with our coworkers. We might be in a book club. We might again have people that we can talk about. Let's say politics. Podcasts could be a great source of
Mhm.
intellectual intimacy that you might have even with a stranger, but they're intellectually stimulating you. Then we have experiential intimacy. So people that we can have experiences with, go to the restaurant, travel, take classes, just pretty much experience life. And lastly, spiritual intimacy. Now, this one people will be like, I'm not religious, I'm not spiritual. Yes, it can have those spiritual experiences, those religious experiences, going to church, meditating together, but it could also be the person you feel comfortable with talking about your belief systems, your
Mhm.
value systems. So, if we look at these 6 tanks and visualize ourselves as a car and we have these 6 tanks, we got to ask ourselves who in our life is filling which tank? Which ones are my partner filling? Which ones are like my friends filling? Which ones are my family members filling? Is there someone in my life that isn't filling any of them? If not, what's the intention of their presence in my life?
Mhm.
And then which tanks am I filling for other people? Because Dr. Pearl talks about this of, never in history have we been during a time where we expect our partner to be everything for us
Yes.
all the
Mhm.
time. And it can be
It's
really
overwhelming.
overwhelming
Mhm.
for someone to be like, "Oh my god, I have to be her everything all the time." And there are moments that our partner is our everything, where we might be traveling and suddenly all of these sticks are kind of intertwined and we're
Mhm.
getting it. But to expect that all the time is a lot of pressure, and that itself is an unrealistic pressure that can lead to disconnection and the end of a relationship. So that's when we lean into community.
Mhm.
Okay, let's say my partner is the one who fills my emotional tank, as well as my brother and my mom. And my partner's great at it. He's a master at filling that tank. But
Mhm.
external stressors of life.
Mhm.
Elizabeth Earnshaw's book, Till Stress Do Us Part. I highly recommend reading it or listening to it. And she talks all about the external stressors that impact relationships. So my partner might have really shitty day at work, zero capacity, comes home, and instead of feeling like, oh, something is missing in my life, I can say, okay, let me lean on to my brother. Let me lean on to my mom for this need right now,
Mhm.
because this is a temporary thing for him.
Mhm.
So, really, it's enabling us to get our needs met in more than one places and taking that pressure off our
Mhm.
partner and vice versa.
I think that's such good information for us to know because I often feel like the lack of all these areas can lead to conflict in the relationship as
Mhm.
well. We're feeling, a lack in so many of these. We're coming home, we see the dirty laundry, and now it's like a thing. So I think that that's so, so, so vital for us to understand and to know that our partner is not going to meet all of them. They're human. And the same way we are human, we cannot meet all those things for them as well. Um, so as we kind of wrap up this episode, I think this has been such, first of all, a beautiful conversation and one that I hope people get a lot out of, especially if you're in relationship or even if you're not in a relationship, to be aware of, what is helpful in conflict and how do we, de-escalate conflict and what to be aware of in our own minds and our own worlds, starting to get more curious about conflict. But what is something that, for our listeners, what are some practical steps that people can take kind of today when it comes to conflict within our lives?
Mhm.
Whether that's with our families, because I think conflict comes up with family, it comes up in relationship, it can come up at work, right? This isn't just related to romantic relationships. How can people start to, have better conflict and better resolutions in their lives today?
Thank you so much for asking that. So, one is we really want to set an intention to listen to understand, not listen to respond. Often we're listening to respond. Oh, I can't wait for this person to finish. I'm going to say X, Y, and Z. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm creating the response in my
Yep.
head, but we really want to understand. And part of understanding is looking at the nonverbal cues, how their body is, how their tone is,
Yeah.
and to be able to do all of that. The foundation of every healthy relationship with self, with others, in my perspective, is a regulated nervous system. So do not overlook the importance that body awareness plays in
Mhm.
conflict resolution. So my practical tip is become familiar with the nervous system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic,
Mhm.
and create a toolbox for yourself on how to regulate yourself. To put yourself in a parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. The sympathetic is the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn
Mhm.
response. So when we are triggered, when we're noticing this fight response coming up, the flight, I want to run away, the fawn, the people pleasing, the freeze, the numbing, and the disassociation, what can I do to bring my body into safety? And I'll just share a few examples of ways that you could do that is holding a warm cup of tea. So mindfully um, engaging your senses. What does it taste like? What does it smell like? How does
Mhm.
it feel? Is it warm? Another one is gargling water. So just it activates the vagus nerve, which is
Mhm.
connecting the brain to the body, and that really helps. Repeating the letter R, so R, that really helps. Going for a walk, shaking, literally shaking. That's what animals do when they're stressed. Drinking cold water, ice therapy, so rubbing ice cubes on your wrist or the back of your neck can really help. If you don't have ice cubes, just put your head in the freezer for a couple of seconds. Slow, deep breaths, taking a shower, sleeping on your back and putting your leg up on the wall. These are very simple,
Mhm.
super simple. Sometimes they're so simple that we overlook them. Or like,
Yeah.
what is like going to like humming or singing going to do for me? But it's actually going to do a lot. So
Mhm.
becoming aware of the toolbox and proactively reaching out. If you're in a meeting and So besides proactively, like reactively, you're in a meeting and someone triggers you, just excuse yourself, go to the washroom, splash some cold water in your face, take some slow, deep breaths, and come back to the conversation when you're feeling regulated. Same if you're at dinner with your friends or your friend says something, put the phone down, delete that long
Mm-hmm.
paragraph,
Yep.
go back to the nervous system, and then come when you're coming from a come back to the conversation from a regulated place. I think nervous system mastering that becomes the foundation to much healthier conflict.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I think it's huge. It's these little things that we don't think about that are so easy for us to do. We don't have to be experts in psychology. We don't have to even have gone to therapy for 10 years. I think these are often really, really practical things that we can start implementing today to really change how we show up in this world and and people are going to notice. I think that's something that, people will start to notice at work. They will start to see like, wow, she isn't reactive. Wow, she is actually more curious.
Mhm.
Or it makes such a huge difference in our lives and how we show up for everyone around us. So, Tannaz, thank you so much for coming on. This was such a beautiful conversation and so enlightening. I feel like I got a lot out of it, and I really hope that our listeners also get a lot out of it. It really, really, really was insightful.
Thank you, Beatrice. It's been so lovely being on, and thank you for sharing your wisdom, your insights, and for creating the space for us to, again, learn these relational skills that none of us were taught. I wasn't taught growing
I
up.
was not taught it either. I didn't have the examples. I've had to take this all on myself.
Same. I didn't have healthy relationships modeled to me. So it really does make the world of a difference when we have these convos and we learn and we take these nuggets and we implement them in our life and then they work and then we want to go and share with our other friends
Yes.
like
Like,
and
what?
the domino effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, so if someone wants to get a hold of you or love to work with you or to learn more about your practice, where would be the best place to send everybody?
So my website, www.minutesongrowth, so minutes and then ON growth.
Okay,
I have actually a free ebook on there, 11 tools for nervous system regulation. Download
great.
them, really go through the tools, see which one resonates. It's not a one size fits all. Customize it to your personality, to your needs. And on social media as well, I create a lot of free content on my Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. And yeah, I have a teacher archetype, so I try to simplify topics to the best of my ability. So yeah, there's a lot of resources there for people to try out. And if they want to work with me, then they can book a consultation to see if I'm a good fit for them. Because I'm just going to plug this in. The quality of the effectiveness of therapy and coaching has more to do with the therapeutic alliance than what the modality used. So they've done a
Agreed.
lot of research on this, on which modality is the most effective, and it's always the therapeutic alliance, how safe you feel with someone. So that's why the consultation is there to see if you feel safe with me. And yeah, you can take it from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you. And we'll put all that information in the show notes for anyone interested. But again, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Beatrice.